Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard to the Blue Heart webcast. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about body language, right? You're out in the street, you come across somebody, you're talking to them. What are they all about? Are they lying to you? Are they being truthful or deceptive? So, in my book, The Interview, I cover this in greater detail. In my classes, I cover it in detail. It's very important. 80 to 90% of human interaction is through body language. People don't, they may say certain words, but their body language is going to be the best indicator of truth or deception. So, one of the things that we had to define initially was, what do we look for when we talk to anybody? You stop somebody on the street, a car stop, you bring them into headquarters, you're at a location, you're interviewing people or whatever. What are we looking for? We're looking for two things. We're looking for truth and we're looking for deception, right? If we identify truth, oh, that's person's being truthful. I can tell by their words, by the information I have in my case or what's been reported to me, and by what they say. Their body language indicators to me are that they're being truthful. That's good. That's what we want to know, because then you can count that person in or out pretty quickly. If you see deception, someone's being deceptive in their words, their information that they're giving you, or in their body language, then this indicates to us that there's something that they don't want us to know. Now, when I teach this in the course, one of the things I say, since we look for truth and we look for deception, if someone is being deceptive, does that mean that they're guilty? And the answer is no. Can it mean that they're guilty? Yes. Someone's being deceptive. It could be because they did what we're investigating and they don't want you to know. But they can also have other things going on that they don't want to get involved with, they don't want to talk about, they don't want you to know about. So an example I use in my class all the time to kind of point this out is, if you were to be called to a local business in your community, you're called to go over there because there's money missing out of the office safe. And you get there and you talk to Phil. Phil's the office manager. And then he's got like 40 people working at desks and cubicles throughout the floor where the business is located. And Phil tells you, yeah, in my office, I have a safe. There's cash in there. Cash is there all the time. We use it for the business. And I went in and I did a count. Usually I count on Friday, but today I counted on Thursday. And guess what? There's $5,000 missing, right? And I didn't take it. So somebody had to come in here and take that money. All right. So you have an idea that a theft has taken place. Somebody's gone into the office. And so now you ask, well, is everyone in the office allowed to go into your office? And Phil tells you, no, actually, there's only 5 people here in this office that are, as part of their job, are permitted to go in there, either to get files or to use the fax machine or the other pieces of equipment that I have in my office. There's only 5 people. And he gives you their names. And you start to interview them. That's the logical place to start. Well, let's talk to the 5 people that are allowed to go in there. So you talk to Mary. You bring in Mary. Hey, Mary, listen, there's money missing and I want to know, did you take it? And Mary says to you very strongly, no. She looks you in the eyes. I did not take the money. Matter of fact, I've told Phil 10 times at least that he should lock that safe every single time he's out of that office, but he doesn't listen. You say, wow, that was pretty good response. Her body language was good. She looked me in the eye. She was direct in her answer and her denial. That was good. Then you talk to Frank. You bring in Frank, and Frank says, I didn't take the money, and I have no idea who would. I know I didn't take it, and I don't think any of the other people that at my level would have come in here and taken that money. And again, he looks you in the eyes. He's very clear in his answers. You feel pretty good about it. And then Tina comes in, and Tina looks, she goes, hi. I said, Tina, I'm here talking about there's some money missing out of the safe. Now, Tina looks down. She looks very nervous. She starts squirming in her chair. Did you take the money? And she's, no, I didn't take the money. And she looks up, she looks down, she looks up, she looks down. She's not making good eye contact. She's squirming around. Her answers are very weak. Tina, Any idea who would have taken it? No, I don't know. I don't know anything about the money. And you say to yourself, aha, all right. So then you interview the other two people, and again, they're very strong in their answers. You said, well, Tina didn't look me in the eye. She spoke down. She mumbled. Um, she didn't seem very confident in herself. Obviously, she must be the thief. Well, I tell you to put the brakes on right there. Obviously, that kind of behavior, when compared to the other four people, would give you the impression that she's being deceptive. And her behaviors were deceptive, looking down, not making eye contact, mumbling, all those things. So you call her back in and you have another interview with Tina. And you find out in the course of that interview that Tina is married. You also find out that Phil, the manager whose office it is where the money's missing, he's also married. And you find out after a conversation with Tina that, lo and behold, Tina and Phil are having an affair. And when that comes out, Tina gets very upset and she says, listen, I didn't take the money, but oh my gosh, if my husband finds out I'm having an affair, it'll ruin my life. And, it's just one of those things. And you start to get this feeling that she's being honest with you, but do you care that they're having an affair? No, you really don't care. That's their personal business. But once that's revealed and she tells you that, then you say, well, what about the money? Now she looks you in the eye. She goes, I didn't take any money. I just don't want anybody to be talking about being in Phil's office. That's going to lead to somebody finding out what happened. And then so her deception was not about taking the money. Her deception was because she didn't want to talk about the affair that she's having. And deception looks the same, whether it's about the crime you're investigating or something else. She's being deceptive about that she doesn't want to talk to you about. So body language is very important to help us to understand, knowing that most communication is done through body language. So when you talk to someone, the things that you're looking for. So in the book, I put a whole bunch of factors in here of things that you should be looking for. All right. Things you should be looking for. And you get the book at blue360media.com. I am also doing a huge video series on the book with Blue 360 Media. It should be out in a couple of months. So you can get the book, you get an audio book, and you can also get the video that goes chapter by chapter on the book. So you get the whole book and you get all my stories and everything that goes with it. But stress and body language, one of the things when people are being truthful, their body doesn't have the same kind of stress as when they're lying. When someone's lying, there's a lot of stress built up in the body. And the more serious the situation, the more they have jeopardy in a situation, the more that stress is going to build up. So for a person who has done something that they shouldn't have done, illegal, that you're investigating, that stress when you're talking to them is going to build up and it's going to come out in lots of ways. So I try and give you a lot of these tips in here of what to look for. You might see that the person doesn't make eye contact. Eye contact is very important. We look people in the eyes. We all know, we were told early on in our lives that if somebody doesn't look you in the eyes, it's because they're lying. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. When someone's withholding information, when they're lying and they look you in the eye, they can feel very, very uncomfortable, right? Because it feels like you can look into their eyes and see the truth, right? So that's a feeling, that's a natural thing that we have in being human beings. Now, really good liars, the people who are professional liars, they know that's something we look for, and they will look you in the eye, right? But in general, the average person that's committed something they shouldn't have done, whether it's an economic crime, a violent crime, a drug, whatever, if they're being deceptive, they're not going to look you in the eye, all right? So that's going to be tough. You might see people slouching in their chair like it's no big deal, like this is no big deal. Why would somebody do that? Well, people would do that because they're trying to tell you something through their body language that this is no big deal. I didn't do anything, so there's nothing for me to worry about. Right? Well, think about it. If a police officer is talking to someone about a crime, that's a big deal. They should be interested. So in here, in the book, there are a lot of examples that we can look at to help us understand. So, a person who's being truthful, a truthful person, when they're sitting there or they're talking to you on the street or they're in their car, they're going to be very interested in what you have to say. They're going to listen to what you have to say. Yes, officer, what can I help you with? What's going on here? And if a person is sitting, very often they will have an open body language, means their legs are not crossed, their arms are not crossed, they're not sitting like this. They're leaning in often to hear what you have to say. They're paying attention to the question. They're listening to you. They're going to think about it and then they're going to give you an answer. That's an open body expression. So leaning in and listening is very important. Conversely, a person who is being deceptive might do that slouching thing because it's no big deal. They're trying to get away from it. They won't make good eye contact. All right. They look around. They will cut you off when you're speaking. So listen, we're talking about them. Hey, I didn't take any money, and this is ridiculous. Every time money's missing, they come to me. Well, if they go to you every time there's money missing, why would that be, right? So you will see them cut you off. They don't listen to the entire question. So we know that through our discussions in the past, and you got to go back and watch other episodes or get the book, get the idea. When someone has Jeopardy, Jeopardy is what causes everything to happen physiologically, right? With someone, if they have Jeopardy, and the more Jeopardy they have, the more it's going to happen. So what happens is when they're trying to look cool, and they oh, yeah, this is no big deal. Why are you picking on me? Blah blah blah. All this kind of nonsense. That stress in their body needs to be relieved, right? So a lot of times, what you'll see people do is when they're stressed out, you'll see them, cracking their back, cracking their fingers, looking at their watch repeatedly, picking things off their shoulder that isn't there, crossing and uncrossing their feet, looking around the room, right? All of these things are to relieve that stress that they feel in their body, right? So that's what they want to do. They want to get rid of that stress that the body feels. So one of the things, a good thing to do is if you see somebody, a very common thing is that you'll be sitting there if you're at a table and the person, their leg might be going. They might be moving their leg, right? Moving that leg to relieve that stress. Pay attention to these things. Try and look under the table. Is their foot going? Are they standing on the side of the road, twisting around? Are they all kinds of these big movements? Call it out. Say, listen, do I make you nervous? People make me nervous. Yeah. Do I make you nervous? I mean, you're sitting there tapping your foot like a million miles an hour. Are you okay? Gee, you keep cracking your back. Are you all right? You keep cracking your fingers. Do I make you nervous? Now, what happens here is that the person may not have realized they were doing those things. That body language is just expressed to get rid of the stress that they feel inside. Now you've pointed it out to them and you've added to it that, gee, I must make you nervous, and they don't want to look nervous. So now they really can't do those things again. So if I'm tapping my foot to relieve my stress and a cop calls me out, hey, you're moving, can I keep moving my foot? No, because I just said I wasn't nervous. Now that's going to be expressed in other ways. You're going to see that's when you'll see, drumming the fingers. You'll see them cracking the fingers. You'll see them cracking the neck. Literally anything else to move around. So moving in those situations are important. The words that people express, right? Words we all know. This, I'm big on words, right? That's why I wrote a book on interview. So when people are stressed out, they will use certain words when they're under jeopardy. So we're listening for what words come out of their mouths. And when they say things that seem like they're trying to tell you they're a good person, like say, this happens a lot, and I see this a lot. A cop will ask a question, and we kind of get caught up in, we know where we want to go. We want this person to confess. And we kind of lose track of doing this purposefully, right? That's why I teach the course and I wrote the book. So you're asking somebody a question. They're listening to your answer and they want to give you the best answer that protects themselves. They're not sure what to do, but their body language will betray them very often. So that happens also in the words they use. They'll say, you get an answer that's not really an answer. right? So, hey, listen, this money's missing out of the office. Do you know anything about it? Do I know anything about it? This body language, what? Who, me? Why would you ask me? I go to church every Sunday. Now, that's an answer, but it's not an answer to my question. My question was, did you take the money? The proper answer to that question, did you take the money, is, officer, I did not take the money. I did not take the money. That's the answer to my question. But we will often take an answer. Somebody will, well, why would you ask me? Why would I need the money? I don't know why you need the money. Maybe you got a gambling problem, drug problem, you got a girlfriend problem, you got a drug problem. I don't know why you need the money. Maybe you're just a thief, right? So people will ask that, and we will take that and go on to our next question. Instead of stopping, watching how they reacted, their body, and the words they said, and say, listen, that's great that you go to church. Why would somebody tell you go to church? What does that mean when somebody says, I go to church every Sunday? Well, that is a way for them to cover, saying, if I'm a person that goes to church every Sunday, of course I wouldn't steal this money. But that's not what you asked. Did you take the money? So you call it out. Hey, listen, your foot's going. Do I make you nervous? Hey, listen, you're cracking your knuckles a lot. Are you all right? Is your back okay? You're twisting your back a lot. You call these behaviors out, and then they know they can't do them, and it'll come out in different ways. When they say something like, they use these catchphrases, I go to church every Sunday. That's trying to tell you they're a good person. They wouldn't steal, as opposed to just answering your question. All right. So the book is filled with lots of these things. I mean, we go into scratching, a mystery scratch, rubbing your hands, a look of fear in the eyes, being distracted and unable to follow a line of questioning. What? What? When people repeat back a question to you. Listen, did you go in Phil's office today? Did I go in Phil's office today? Yes, that's what I just asked you. Did you go in Phil's office today? Well, I'm allowed to go in Phil's office. See, that sounds like an answer, doesn't it? I'm allowed to go in Phil. I didn't ask you if you're allowed to go. I already know you're allowed to go in Phil's office. Phil told me. I'm asking you, did you go in that office today? Right? So we want to focus our questions based on their answers and their body language. It's all very, very important what we look at here. The last thing I'm going to talk about on this little episode is the concept of micro gestures. Micro gestures. So earlier I mentioned that really, really good liars, people who lie all the time, professional liars, they know the kind of things you're looking for. They know you're listening to the words. You're looking for the open body language. You're looking for listening to the whole question before you answer, not cutting you off. These are all little things that they know someone, when they're being deceptive, does, and they don't want to look deceptive. So they will listen to your full question. They'll go through the whole thing. A micro gesture is a whole nother study of human response, because even if you're a good liar, you still have that stress on your body when you're lying, and you have to relieve it. But you're smart enough to know not to do the things that are obvious. So what happens is a micro gesture is right before they say the lie. Listen, did you take the money? They'll look at you, and you might see a twitch of the eye like this. You might see a lip move. No, I didn't take the money. You might see just a quick body movement, right? They're controlling their reactions as best they can. But the reality is that stress is still there, and it needs to be relieved, and they control it, but they can't control that little twitch, that little tick, that little movement. It's hard to see it first. But once you start to see it and you recognize it, and you have some investigations where you notice that, and then the person confesses later, then you can put two and two together and say, hey, I noticed that micro gesture, and this person was pretty good at answering the questions, but it turns out their fingerprints are all over the murder weapon, right? So they were lying, whatever it is. All right, so body language is extremely important. It's 80 to 90% of human communication. If you know what to look for and you combine it properly with the words people use, the way they respond to you, can help you determine between truth and deception. And the last thing we'll talk about truth and deception is this. If you get truthful answers and you feel comfortable that the person is being truthful, everything they said matches what you know about the crime. They've been open, they had good posture, there were not a lot of body language things that indicated deception. That's good. You can move along and count them kind of out, right? Okay, that person, I think they didn't take the money. That's good. When you start to see deception, you need to understand why they're being deceptive. So in our example, young Tina was having an affair with Phil, and that's what she didn't want to come out. That's what she was afraid of. She didn't take the money. She was afraid that this line of questioning was going to lead to find out her and Phil were having an affair. So her deception was obvious, but it wasn't for guilt, right? So when you hear deception, you have to ask questions. Ask more questions, right? Every question you ask should lead to another question until you've fully exhausted the topic. So body language helps us see beyond what a person is trying to do to control the conversation, to say, I didn't do anything, when actually they very well might be guilty. All right, so I want to thank our publisher, Blue 360 Media. I want to thank Medical Essential Diagnostics, who give you a complete health screening, make sure you're okay so you can get that pension. The Blue Magazine, right? I write for them a lot. I'm doing a lot of features with them. Go check all these things out. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about us, right? I'm here trying to provide information to help you be better at what you do and serve your community. All right, so I want to thank everybody for being here. This is Lieutenant Joe for the Blue Heart Webcast.